We are back on MorningLine. Thanks for joining us. This is a subject that's important to me because I spend so much time outside. As you see, we're talking about how to be safe in the sun, and that means covering up. With us this morning is Dr. Bill Stebbins. He's from over at Vanderbilt. He's a dermatologist, also a skincare surgeon. So that means you cut on people sometimes, which is what has to be done if you have something that develops that looks dangerous. We've got a call. Let's take that before we continue our conversation. Line's open if you want to jump in. It's always nice to ask for free medical advice, right? Let's go to Mary. Mary, good morning.
Good morning, Nick.
Hi, Mary. What's on your mind?
Well, I have let me turn my phone up.
Sure.
I have, in the summertime, I do water aerobics at the YMCA.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm bad about not using any oils and creams to protect myself. And I have a place on my face. I wear glasses, and I have a place just on my cheekbone on the side, and it's a discoloration. But right in the middle of it, it looks like a large, light-colored freckle.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wanting, I can tell I guess it's the pigmentation around that is lighter.
And it's changed. This is something that you've noticed. You haven't had it all your life. It's developed.
I've had it in the last maybe 5 years, but it's gotten bigger.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, we were talking during the break about the two important things to playing it safe. It's prevention, obviously, and monitoring. All right. So she's noticed this. Now, I know you don't see her, you don't know, but I would think she should have that looked at.
Absolutely. One of the types of melanoma that develop oftentimes in patients older than 50 is something called lentigo maligna, which is a superficial melanoma that skates along the surface of the skin. And they can grow to be fairly large, and what she's describing, again, could be a couple of different things. One of those that we'd want to rule out is that superficial type of melanoma.
Okay.
When you hear about a brown spot on the face that's been growing over the past few years, these don't tend to bleed. What they tend to do is look a little bit asymmetric in terms of their pigment. And oftentimes they look very benign even. And when we see these and we hear this kind of history, that's something that we would recommend probably taking a little biopsy of to assess that better.
I'm glad she called in with that example. So throw out a few other things. I mean, my rule of thumb, and I've become more cognizant to it, if I or my wife notice something that's just changed or is different, and I try to go to the dermatologist at least once a year, sometimes more. But if there's something that I just noticed that's changed, beside an obvious freckle, I go have it checked. What are the things that really should send you maybe to a dermatologist to look at?
Well, usually, it's so funny how often we hear the same story from patients that they've noticed a sore. And again, this more tends towards not the melanoma side, but the non-melanoma skin cancers. Okay. Either they say, oh, my barber cut my hair and they nicked me and it hasn't stopped bleeding, or my curling iron hit my face and this spot won't stop, or my cat scratched me. I mean, it's amazing how frequently I hear those stories of a spot that appeared, people don't really know why, and it won't heal. And it repeatedly either scales up or bleeds and opens up and then heals back over. So again, those, because they are far more common than melanomas, we hear about those every single day. And so something that's growing, that's bleeding, that becomes either sore or tender to the touch, basal cells tend to have more of a shiny appearance, a pearly appearance. They tend to erode in the center over time. So people that may be shaving their face or their legs, they tend to, notice that more frequently. Whereas melanomas, we use the ABCDE criteria, which are asymmetry, so a spot that may look like a brown freckle that's all of a sudden become asymmetric. Border irregularity, it's not perfectly round, it's got sort of a scalloped or strange border that doesn't look symmetric on either side. And then also the color. So you want to look and say, is this an evenly pigmented brown spot, or does this have different colors throughout it? And then D is diameter. So, again, this isn't always perfect, but something the size of a pencil eraser or bigger, which is about 6 millimeters. And then E is evolution, and that's, I think, one of the most important, in the sense that people that look at themselves every month or so and they go, you know what, that spot looks different to me now. And it's incredible how well-informed patients do at checking out their own skin, or having a spouse check out their own skin. And you don't want to do it necessarily every day, but you want to do it once a month so that you can actually notice those differences.
It's amazing how many people might have some of what you just described, and for whatever reason, some of us just choose to ignore it. You know, they roll through life. I'm wondering, just with someone with your expertise, you ever been in the grocery store walking down the street where someone just happened to walk past you and you just casually looked up and either saw something on their face, neck, arm, or leg that you thought, dang, that's a melanoma, and you kind of say, excuse me, sir, I just don't mean to interrupt, but I'm a dermatologist and you've got a problem. Have you ever had, I'm just curious, or if you saw it, I don't know if maybe you'd act, I think you'd tell them. Has that ever happened with you?
It's happened twice.
I was just wondering.
And I really, I struggle because, again, you don't know.
You might be saving their life.
You know, and again, only with melanoma, again, I've seen a couple basal cells out there as well.
Yeah.
I remember being at Home Depot here near 100 Oaks where I work and seeing someone with a basal cell for sure. And I just said, this is incredible. You know, I do not mean to step on your toes or
I'm not looking for business. You go to but I just want to let you know what I see here is something.
And again, it's happened twice ever with spots I was concerned about melanoma.
I think you're a good egg for doing that. I don't know that everyone would, and it's invading a space, but I can tell you this. If you were sitting here with me doing the show right now and you noticed something on my forehead, even on air, I would hope and expect you to say, Nick, you know what? Just as we're talking, go get that looked at. I just think that, I don't know why that popped in my head, but I think that's interesting. So let's go to Anita. Anita, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Anita. What can we do for you?
I was diagnosed with lupus in 2007, and I'm currently in remission. And I never have really quite understood how, when you read about the symptoms can be triggered by the sun. And I would like to see if this person can explain that, how the sun affects lupus.
I don't know if that's outside your realm of specialty, but maybe, I don't know, do you have insight on that?
It's known that cutaneous lupus or discoid lupus, which is often the type that we see on the skin, on the face, for whatever reason, I'm not exactly sure why, but it does, sun exposure is a very well-known trigger for that. And it may be just that the ultraviolet light is causing some kind of damage which causes inflammation, which then leads to that autoimmune process manifesting itself in the area where there's inflammation.
Well, then that's a good call, because that's another example of, you know, we're talking about skin cancers predominantly, which is what we really see a lot of, but someone with lupus, there's another reason to have skin protection.
Absolutely, and it's in fact critical to treating that, especially in the sun-exposed areas, is that they have to be very strict with their sun protection. Is
there any, I don't want to push it that way, but is there any benefit to getting some modest sun exposure? I know when I was a teenager, sometimes I'd get out in the swimming pool and, you know, like a lot of teens, I had bad acne. And sometimes just being out in the sun sometimes, not getting burnt, but it would dry the acne up for me. So I thought, well, that's a positive thing.
And you know, again, I think it's a little bit of a deal with the devil. In that there are certain things that sun exposure does help. And sometimes it can help acne. Strangely, sometimes it can make it worse. You know, people say that, well, sometimes, you know, sun exposure, of course, is important for vitamin D production.
I was going to say, what about that?
Right?
Is that, I mean, you can get that in your milk, right?
You can get it in your milk, you can get it in oily fish.
Yeah, I don't think we're hurting for vitamin D.
You can get it in supplementation. And I will say that, you know, that's become a very trendy or popular topic over the past decade is, what about vitamin D? And, you know, isn't it important that we get at least a few minutes of sun exposure a day? And the answer really is that probably not. It's important that we not only get vitamin D from our diet, but we also can get it from supplementation. And those recommendations have been changing over the past few years in terms of how much we actually need. And we are learning more and more that it is a very important vitamin to have at an adequate level in our body. But again, the sun exposure is not the best way to get it. It's a way to get it, and it's a very efficient way of getting it, but it also causes enough negatives.
Yeah, there's side effects.
There's better ways to do it.
Good. All right, let's go to Mike. Hi, Mike. Are you there, Mike? Let's see, we'll come back. Mike, are you there? I hate it when they hold on if they don't come through. We'll come back. See if Mike's still there. Maybe he hung up just a moment ago. You know, I'm wondering, when we come back from this break, I want to get into more sunscreens and what level you have to get. I'm to the point now where I will put on sunscreen. Maybe I'm not putting enough, or I get in the water. And now I'll get out of the water. And as you can tell now, I've been out some, you know, gardening and surfing and stuff like that. And I get some color now even though I'm wearing the dang sunscreen. Does that mean I'm doing a lousy job? The difference is if I hadn't been wearing it, this would have been burned instead of tan.
Exactly.
And I'm not shooting for the tan, but I am covering up now. I get this bullfrog stuff. It's like 60, and it stays on in the water. I spray it all over, okay? And yet I'm still getting some color to my skin.
And you know, that happens because sunscreen is, everyone sort of views sunscreen as an impenetrable shield. Once you have sunscreen on, you feel like I've done my job and nothing can hurt me. The issue really is that it depends when we apply it and how frequently we apply it. And then it also depends on what we're looking for. And in terms of that sun exposure, you know, it's blocking about 15 blocks about 93% of our UVB.
Okay.
Whereas 30 blocks about 97. And so we're still getting that very small amount. And as the sun hits that sunscreen, it's degrading it.
And then if you're in the water on top of it, it's
Right.
splashed. So I guess the key, and we'll talk more when we come back, it's reapplying and staying on it. You've got to keep reapplying the sunscreen.
And I really view that as our last defense. I think sun protective clothing is far superior.
Okay,
and much more
and there are rash guards you can buy that say like, but if it's not protective too, I mean, some rays can make it through certain types of clothing too.
Absolutely.
Holy cow. All right, we'll take a break on that note. When we come back, more of your calls, 737-7587 if you want to jump in. Chance to ask a question of the dermatologist. We'll be back with more right after this.